Lola, so tene tsama la tashi tele. Ane tanga tso semjong nyenyo nishu nanga nyenyo sambate. Sambate ane chapaze. Chapate karaze na tumu ka char tosha shenji pambar dubi sambe nipa lawa na ane kana matwa chapate baur dubi semjong ze. Karare la na tumu ka char tore ze tumu ka ane charto yamba kanjila ane me janda ka sosola phamar dobe lapchan ro tindi java yana ane choran ane nipandri diri kuyo re se choran la nipandri diri yo re se te ma janda ka phasem ka kane lane kola lawa yana te nipa pha bever do pa nipa pha ane kon do pa chi aya tendiga semjong chila ya ane chapa la uyore.
So hello to everybody, and we are exploring the mental factors, and at the moment we are in the section of the 20 secondary afflictions, and we arrived at the third one, which is concealment. And so concealment is part of ignorance, and what concealment looks like or how it manifests in a sense is this in order to avoid or to be confronted in a sense with others' criticism or others, any type of criticism, one hides one's faults in order to avoid any type of exposure in that sense.
Ane chapa tere ta jiba tsikpa ze semjong tsikpa ze te karere na shenji rang nipa langwa na nipa lang yoba tang thorsha ke samba me par chowa tang ane khunzen je ge jendi bi sambe ane tsiktsbo marin do bi semjong o di chelen tsiktsb so jawa mai ba dingar chi kare
Te pumuchi tinanu la curante tanda mute chesha tu tanda tiki tu kena sunjona
no de dan tsukba ze de kare na rang nipa sosola nipa tang ane tendi yowa ina te me janda ga lang yo ne nipa la nyoba tang ta nge nipa de che son nyambe nyoba che che ten thorsha ze na thorsha ze on de nipa kare ndo ji soso go ane che sha yo na te ane trambo go ne jala ane sheba jala raba telan thorsha ze war ngato draba tang lama tendi na soso nipa tongwa ze ji gukyo re nipa soso la ane chonsona nipa te chonsona te janda la labgo re kashi nipa kashi labgo re nipa kashi tramo tangsha ngale nipa diri chonson ze ane te zene labgo re tendi gon thorsha je samba me paras tendi gon janda la pa labdo me ne koron chowa tang kunze kaza ngal di ngal do thara ane chowa tang kunze wange jendi pe sambe jendi ba ze onde kola murgawe namger tendi wange ane kola ya tsik tsupo mawa tsik dikcha kola laba o tendi labar ndopi tendi semjong jila ya ane tsik pa la worez korang chele de karre na ane tsikso so chama ba twan jikbe dingar chegre ta janda la tsikso mawa na janda ga kola tsit ane ya tsikso magra tendi indi ane dingar so la ya ane se maske ba zo ro tendi di dingar ke ba chegre chele de aso.
And so now moving on to the next mental factor, which is spite. Spite is when we contemplating our own sort of negativities, no, sorry, if somebody else sort of mentions one's own negativities, then as for oneself, we do not feel any type of regret, or we do not confess any of these negativities or admit any of these negativities. So, for example, as a monastic, there are these certain negativities which are important for us to express and to admit in a sense. And so here it's this mental factor where there is not this intent or this wish to feel regretful or to admit in the sense the negative action one has committed. And so because of being under the control of anger, of belligerence and resentment, one has this sort of negative outlook, and therefore will have this, will be propelled to insult others or wish to insult others. And so the function basically of spite here is to insult others and so forth, and engage in all of these type of negativities which will bring about future suffering or problems.
Yimbate kare rezena ane papa tome kunti na la ane sikba kan jena aze control chart topa choa tan kunzi ba ngon robi semge kene narsen bateze ta kon kunti na la kare son rezena sikba ngonzen chiondi ane control chart topa tan ane choa tan ane kunzi de zo ngon sonwa tendiga ngon sonne di jilaya ane paropo kene narsembaze ane parobola ane dibo tan sambi samlo teche di jilaya tsbo mavrndo ba tendiga tenche ge tendiga ane tenche ba chilaya tenche be senjong chilaya ane tsbaze ore ko gariche ore na sona mai ba mombo ya phere sona mai ba zeondi sona mai ba digpi le digpa tendi mambo phere chebata ane devalaya ane reper mane pillechen devalaya ane nromuchua ane deva tomuchua o tendiga chele chanchi re son yo re ze ngomba kendina la.
And spite is explained by a sangha in a specific way, where he describes that the capacity or how we recognize spite is first of all to be understood as being part, or a kind of part, or in a sense it's a section in a sense of anger, of belligerence and resentment. So these mental factors actually precede spite. So by having this kind of these mental factors, anger, belligerence and resentment within one's mind, one stream of thought is very much harmful in a sense. And so this is where one will be propelled to insult and so forth. Yeah. And so in this sense, and this is where spite kind of kicks in that sense. And so spite is really about destroying and avoiding the increase of any type of merit. It is also it enables the increase of negativities, and it kind of pushes oneself away from any sort of experience of happiness, or any type of either kind of moving towards happiness or obtaining happiness. It kind of pushes us away from that.
Tubada tendichire tene ngabate chato zade ane semjong chato de jerdang chato shin nyengar la chane jangi punso la muzopar sem konen tubi semjong chila ya chato ze wore chato ze ne koran tsu koran jena mato chapa pa tse yora de topocha ko topocha mato pa semdro in sem yachimbo mayimba sem put gotobocha cha toze kora min korantare de karre na jerdang char to barez jerdang agora yigi tanyu tugna jerdang char to shin ane nyengar la chapa nyeba tang kurta la chapa de nyeba da kurta ze ondi sosola ajanda ga chi tewa tang na sosola ya tora cha tang sosola chi je cha la phya tindila cha ne ane jangi punso la muzopar chato jesa te chato te soso tang nyamba mo soso le gang le yuwa 아니 파쇼고 머지라야 차도 깨고 요래 대인디 파쇼고 머들라 롱교레 땀년자레 든디 퍼선 초바 요바이나 소소 때라 무조버 때라 먹가버 때라 먹가네 셈 코네 투비 셈 존지라야 아니 차도라고 그래스
And so now moving on to jealousy. Jealousy is understood as being part of anger, and actually the etymology of the word in Tibetan is referring to being stuck in a sense between one's two shoulders. Yeah, and so in the sense what this is referring to is, as opposed to have an open mind, a kind of extensive mind or a kind of expansive mind, the mind is very much stuck in a sense between, you know, our two shoulders. And so jealousy also has this dimension of being attached to gain and attached to a fame or having a good reputation. And it has this dimension of also finding others' sort of success or any type of wealth or excellence that others have unbearable. And so we generate jealousy in relation to people we are close to. We can also generate, you know, generate jealousy in relation to people we are not so close to as well. But basically, it's kind of noticing the fame and the success of others, or the wealth of others, and finding that unbearable, and sort of experiencing this disturbed state of mind, this disturbed, unhappy state of mind.
대양 다이 강다 주바 파바 토메 군티 나라야 가르송 레즈나 차도 강제나 니바다 크르탈라 하바르 차네 아니 아젠기 펀소 퍼선 소비 캬버라 무조브르기와 셈코네 트바 아니 제르당 차르토 바테즈 예므데와타 레버머니 빌레첸 오즈 타 차토 제야데 컨디지 요레즈나 아니 니바다 크르탈라 하바르 차네 닝거라 하바르 차네 jangi person tobi ane khabarla mazopa sem kone thudya ane tindi jerdang ga chartore ze teang ko garche orezena yemdewa ta ane yemdewa chegre ta soso maskipa janda ga person tobi longkyo ta tamnyen ra la soban thondi soso semba maskipa soso yemdewa ane devala ya repar manepa dewa thop matopa Tendigi lechan, tendigi chelechan, chele karina, tendigi reze, texon yo reze, continua.
Ti rekpa minepar ki lechan sena?
Repar minepe lechan zena, devala repar minepa.
Laso.
Deva topur karze, topala, ta ko kek chepa. Tendigi chelechan reze.
And so Asanga continues to discuss this idea of jealousy by describing it once again as having this attachment to gain and fame, or material wealth, or sort of, you know, social status, one could understand it. And because of this attachment, one really struggles by seeing others' success or others' sort of good fortune. And Asanga also explains that attachment is itself part of anger. Yeah. It forms part of anger, and it's a state of mind which is very uncomfortable. It is a mental factor, which means that we are not at ease in a sense, because we are observing other people's success, and we're not able to maintain a settled mind by contemplating or by acknowledging their success. And so there's also a dimension here where jealousy, it prevents us from coming into contact with any type of happiness. Yeah, happiness will be out of reach for a person who has this mental factor of jealousy active in their mind.
Tindi tato tala ayewa tala aniyores ranta nyambi pansola amupi tato chitang ranle lapai pansola amupi tato aniyores sosole mawa yena tela tato kegmares tela kar kegrezena tonchon ta mambeze tindi lor kegres Ranta nyamba la ina soso ta damnyam ro pena zenda chikban ro ina yana soso ta chi panjor ta shiyon ta to thama nyamba ina tendi nyamba indi kola mu be ane chato chikre ku phozon sobi ane tamnyen da ta longkyo de sola mu ne soso la margawa chikre yana soso le hakpi so so le tes ya ane me na gamma te so la ya mu bi na cha to te na je che re de te cha to la ni yo re de ran da nyam ba la mu bi ane cha to chi ta ran le la ba la mu bi cha to chi yo re.
And so usually jealousy is divided itself into two. And so there's a type of jealousy which is takes as its object people which are kind of in same level as us or equal, we could say, as us. And then there is a type of jealousy which focuses on people which are superior or better than us, we could say. Okay. And so because jealousy doesn't arise in relation to people who are who are not in a sort of same plane or on the same ground as us. If there's somebody which we consider being lower than us, for example, in the material dimension or in a social status dimension, we won't be jealous in relation to those people. We only disregard them and look down upon them. Jealousy doesn't come into play. So jealousy comes into play in relation to people which we are on the same ground, on the same kind of level. So this could be, for example, classmates. It could be people of the same sort of, social class as you. And so it's by having this attachment towards gain and success and seeing other people's, these people who are on the same level as us having these successes and having an unbearable sort of, mental reaction to this and feeling jealous of their success. And then it's the same kind of idea in relation to people who are on a higher ground than us, who are better off than us or who are socially, more distinguished or whatnot. Again, there is this by observing their state, their material or social state or so forth, we generate this state of mind of jealousy.
Serna de tere nga so mi serna chembo du ze chora serna te ane docha ka char to sha nyengar la cha ne yo cha tom ni ben zambar do bi semjong chula ya serna ze gore gar ze na docha ka char to bare de koran ngo te docha ka char to sha ane nye pa da kurta nyengar la ha cha ne jen cha che ne yo cha kare na ya janda la pa te mando pa so 가르쳐 젠차체나 야라 동문도 봐 된디고 남바창지 sem정실라야 세르나라 오레스
And our next mental factor, which is miserliness. Miserliness is a part of it, and so it forms part of attachment, and there is an attachment in order to once again gain material gain or kind of social recognition or being praised or having acknowledgement from others, being attached to one's reputation in that sense. And because of this brings about this kind of inability and this and there is no wish or no want to give anything. So this is a type of mental factor which we're discussing here.
세나 젤레데 카르나 요쳇 마뇨 텐체 바소 문도 바침보 키토제 요쳇 마뇨 아데 요쳇데나 마토 잘라 규단 잘라라서 바 소소라 카레 요바테 마뇨 이치비 텐체 바 마뇨 아데테 마뇨리 마타와 페나 잘란도 고모고 참마야 냐데니 잔달라 파테 마토아 마 이그 마토아 든디고 셈가 페 담든 즌데니 든디고 ane doba chembo tende yoche manyo wa shi chane yoche munkhwa namja nyonda matawa sakpa la segres te kunti na la son yores te kunti tsuda chubare sha.
And so the definition which is presented in the Abhidhamma by Asanga is very similar, and if we discuss and reflect more upon the function of miserliness, it's what it does is that it prevents one from reducing the amount of material things that you have. So this means that you're not able to give up. You're not able to let go of any kind of material thing you have. You kind of have this tendency to hoard and to guard whatever material thing you have. And so this is how it kind of acts out this dimension of miserliness.
근데 semju nyenyu nyeshe na ga dumbate gyöze ma to yo gyöze chiwa de na ga gyöze gyöde do cha da tmu garong ga char to ba re yana do cha ga char to ba yana tmu ga char to ba to shin de ane nyengar la cha ne ya lui san be ran la me bi yonde yobarta tomur do bi semjong os li jelen longso de ber che pa os 아니 다 가르라 오르스나 규제한테 도차다 뜨무 가로고 차토레 아니 그런 오 가르르즈나 니바 가르데 니엔가르라 차네 아잔 루이 삼바레 아잔다 루와 슬르탄 간데르즈나 란라 용데 메나에 용도도 체네 데야 요버토머도바 든디고 셈정치라야 아니 귤라오레스 디기 젤레데 가르드나 롱소 더버체파 롱소 달라 롱소 nga요레 오 딘디인디 코 아네 드비아가 안타 젤레차레스 셈종
And so now moving on to the next mental factor, which is deceit. So deceit can either be part of attachment, it can also be part of ignorance. So it falls into either of these two sort of greater, we could say, disturbing emotions. And so there is again similar in the sense that there is this attachment to gain and kind of approval and acknowledgement of other, an attachment to one's reputation. But from this attachment to these two things, one is impelled or propelled to fool other people, to trick other people. And so how does one go on about fool other people? Is that you pretend that you have something although you lack it, So you're acting as if you have a certain thing or you possess a certain thing, but in reality you don't. So and if we think about the dimension of, if we think of the function, of deceit, this is something which will push us to engage in wrong livelihoods. And there are 5 different types of wrong livelihoods which it will push us to engage in.
Hola, tere, teni longso zayatala, longso tela ngayo ret. Karare zena tsanchu zayak chik tang, ane kasa zayak chik, ane zhoglong zayak chik, ane topjin jarwa zayata, nyeben tsowa, nyeben tsowa zayak, ter ngayo ret. Tso karare zena ayodje, pe na gom ja mashina gom ja shin, do chene pe mi jandaga tawi kapse ko gom jaga yon don do order chando ane jan gorkor tane lewa ne jandaga kola chu ane pena chunchu zate ale tendi de chena ene lonso te to yan de chetes
Chisan kiran ki tambo te pena gom javya tan te tsola sopati tambo te tire kagire
gom yabo ja machina gom jaga yon do che de choro te gyure pasola yonda gom jawi yonda mena ya yonda yoba tonne ane pasho de ngokor ta te loya isane sosola nipa da kirtan ro so chalan ro nimba ro arata ya cheto so gom jane de ando ta yang chu kyoba nyam chong chong chan ro odeso ane gyure deso jendo ka samlo chora semjonde ane gyure deso ane longso drba longso drbiaga ane gychakwa res ane longso dela ngayo res longso ngade de anta sarete
And as for these wrong lives, like I mentioned, there are 5 of these, but just to give you an idea how deceit sort of plays out, it will be, there's this dimension of wanting to, you're pretending you have something or you're doing something when actually you have no clue. You're trying to fool somebody. So it could be, you pretending to meditate and to look, very sort of holy in a sense, in order to gain some kind of material wealth or in order to have a particular reputation. So this is what deceit will do. It's this wish, this mental factor to fool people, to trick people in order to be able to get something. And there are 5, and it will push you to engage into the 5 kinds of wrong livelihood. And these are flattery, hinting, seeking a reward for a favor, using force and contrived means.
Tene longso ngata. Tanda di chele te longso dober cheparese ora gyu. Longso de la ngayo rese. Nga karese na tsunchu de achigre. Tsunchu te karese na mayen yendo cheba. Mayen yendo cheba. Zena pe na tsutum yapo song mato na song tondo do chene. Mi jandagan tongi kabza song tondo do chene. Mayen yendo cheba. Chig. 아니 카사 제약지 거래데 카사 제나 아니 잔달라 까자니 모셔네 아주 porque que chena teleche base tele 까자니 모셔네 고사네 아니 니 바라 타와치 요레스 아니 졸론 제약지 요레스 졸론데 잔달라 고지타네 총아마 나라 님바드리들 줄 펜토보 총송 제안도다 yang te dan dawa yo na pe ya bo du ze ndo tendi go je ta ne ane kola nyin ba ra thap cha la joglon ze wo ane thop jin ja wa ze ate ane wan yo ta ne ko sa ne tro sha ndo ta ane me jan da ta ne ko sa ne len chu ndo cha la ndo teni thop jin ja wa ane nye pe nye ban so wa ze thama de chi yo re ze pa nye ba chong chong te ne tse chimbo le a samlo tezola tindiger nga talaya longchor nga ze te la ores te nga to tabatang ane ta ta rabchong ate chogu tezo tindiger chena digo mares longchor nga tezo gyotala tanda gyoze semjong dambate gyoze ten ro yores
And so considering this mental factor of deceit, which is the seventh in this category, let's think a bit more about how it plays out, how it acts out. So just like I mentioned now, I talked about the 5 wrong livelihoods, and to go through them, so first of all, let's think about contrived means, which is one of the wrong livelihoods. So contrived means that you're pretending, like I said, you're pretending that you have something or you can do something in order to be able to fool something or to be able to get something from the other person. So this could be, for example, pretending that you have pure ethics, that you're a very ethical person, and so you act in a particular way in front of people to create that impression, so people believe you to be a certain way. So this is a contrived means. Now, if we think about flattery, which is another one of the 5 wrong livelihoods, it means that you are saying, kind words, and you're really trying to kind of, in a sense, butter somebody up to get them to do what you want to, and you say all these beautiful, sweet sounding things for them to, to gain something, to get something from that person. Then there is hinting. So hinting is saying something like, oh, remember some time ago you gave me this and it was so useful and it helped me so much, and basically you're saying all this, you're hinting at something in order to be able to get something in return. So there's a kind of manipulation involved there. Then there's using force, which is another type of wrong livelihood, which is basically by using force in order to be able to get something from the other person. And then we have, which one is it? Then we have seeking reward for a favor, which will be basically we give something, of maybe minute value to somebody else in order to be able to get something of greater value in return. And so it is really unacceptable for any type of monastic, whether monk or nun, to engage in these 5 wrong livelihoods.
tene semjo japa yozate karrezena docha ta tum garong ga char to shin ane nyengar la chabe wanga jangor mor che dochin rang ni ba jangi mishi ber jendo bi semjo onze ta ku ngod karrezena yozate ngode docha ta tum garong ga char to re ta na ganda chibare ane nyengar la chabe wangi ane janda ngor mor cheba janda ane mashi barche ba ta rang so so la nipa mongbo yo re so so la nipa yo na ta shangi mishi par chen do bi semjong chula ya ane yo ze wa so so la nipa mongbo yo na ta shan da ga tabshi ta na shan ji ane mashi par cheban do bi semjong chyo ra te la yo ze wa re
And so now the next mental factor, which is dissimulation. And so dissimulation is like the previous mental factor. It is a part, or it can be a part of either attachment or a part of ignorance. And so as regards its nature, what it looks like, again, there's this dimension of attachment towards gain or having a reputation. And so in order to be able to achieve that goal, one is someone in the dark, yeah? So you try to make sure that somebody does not find out about something in order for you to be able to gain something, okay? So you will try to hide, for example, any type of negativity. So even if you've done something bad, you really try and, hide everything and make sure that nobody ever kind of finds out about it, to keep people in the dark in that sense.
Then you that the Chatan and the Simjo Tamala Korang Rere More down, Yan Koran Chele Zena, Koran Simjon T Leka Karikar Legio, but Korang Mote Karrezen and the Nichires, who Leka Karle Orezen and the Nichir Legreze, then the Tamala Yore, then the Chele, Yantabe Danga Nibi, part of Chubilature, so. Yanta pe damga zena chinchimalo pe damga lapcha tindiga soso la ra la ya ane parcho che pardo chubi legend re de ko chele de kar zena damga yanta ba da damga chinchimalo ba nyeba la ya pardo chubi legend re
And so in relation to these mental factors, and you probably have noticed it up until now, because each one of these mental factors is broken down in kind of two sort of main kind of ways. Yeah, we explore the mental factor in two ways. So the first side that we explore is looking at the nature of the mental factor. And so we look at its nature and its aspect, yeah, the different kind of qualities that it has. And then the second thing that we do is we look at its function, which means what does it do? How does it act out? What does it bring about in that sense? And so here, what dissimulation brings about, or how it functions, is that it will prevent receiving any of authentic and valid instructions or advice.
Tene kodan rabu kari yorezena tanda karze semjo nishu nanglo ninyu nishu nanglo la ane chapa zeyat tanda samba chapa zeyat tang ane ayod nin rabu yorez kar niga bevi na bacharez beva sosola nipa kar rezena chapa bevi na bacharez chapa zeyat ya 소소를 니바요나 때 잔달라 머신 잔다 하마고 베샤 데라 아니 차발라 오레스 요데아데 가르체 오레즈나 베아가 탑초 오레스 소소를 니반도 주 요예나 때 잔다 마시아가 탑시 라마다 타네 아니 고 잔다 마시아 제바텔라 요라 오레스 아니 소소 니바데 파 베샤 잔달라 ane thon ma chiwa ta janda la ma she pa te ane chapa re ta ma she a jang shiro che ondi te ma she a thap shin ra ma da ta de ya la ane ga yo la wo re ni che ta ne da po yo re ni
And so if we think about these mental factors that we've just gone through in this session, you might think that there is some similarity between concealment and dissimulation. Yeah, so generally they are in one sense very similar, because they are all about hiding something. They're about keeping somebody or something in the dark about something. Yeah, and so if we just remember what concealment is hiding whatever negativity we've done from the other. Yeah. And it's dissimulation is different because it's about kind of searching for methods to do that. Yeah, it's like maybe somebody, for example, you're hiding a negativity that you've done. So this would be called concealment. And then that person's about to find out what you've really done. And then you really start to get animated in order to try and find a way for them to stay in the dark. And so that way aspect of going, out of your way and thinking of different ways to keep that person in the dark, that would be a dissimulation.
Jakpane, ane dochak che char toshi, anyela, ane name baso zi, zache je punso je, tsama karon tone, gajan yed deve sem kwambi sem jonjila ya, ane jakpa la wores. Garzena jakpa zeyate dochak che char tores, ane ranyela, name batang, tseran watang, ane tendigo, ta panjola to la tega kobayo ba tendila ane omune tendi karde kanro chin thone gajan yedeve semya khambi na ba chanjila ya japala wores
Yanget Geshe Gablana so se me pas sok sarche ki punso ki sema ganrun tonne ngati sat kare zelutik gutsugume yangya surana.
asla docha che chartore de ko jakba de ane ran na ta jakba che de ni pe na ngan re na ngi jela jakba che on di karza nga rang ranye la ane na tha me ba ta ane tseri wa ta ane lang cho ta ngi zibo de to ya bo yo ta so so zibo yo na zibo la so pa la mu ne tendi ko phoso chobe za che ge chu tendi phoso chobe sama na tendi garon chu ton ne so so gaja yedde ne de pa chum ro wa da sem ya khan ne da nga shu ji in sa re sam sam ro tendi ji la ya ane jakpa re kar de jakpa la wo re
La sotutinagina. And so this next mental factor is called haughtiness. And haughtiness is also part of attachment. And it refers to you and kind of how you perceive yourself in a sense, okay? So it would be, for example, as for you, you are, you think that you have this, you're not sick and you have this long life and you're healthy and you have a strong body and a beautiful body. And so there's this, this mental factor does is that it observes these different sort of excellences or kind of good things in life, but these are contaminated excellences or contaminated positive things we have in our life. And so with this mental factor of haughtiness, it looks at these and thinks, I am so great, so there's this kind of like, the mind becomes kind of a bit you become a bit full of yourself by observing these different qualities in a sense, contaminated qualities.
Tene ngarger ta jakpa ni chetan rabo yores karzena yinna yang koran so semjo so re de ore ngarger sem khambi na bachan res lobo yini zog na la ya ngarger jakpa khamba na rang chula chapa sem ne yon sak tik ba oze te la ore da kar la ore na ngarger zate sem khamba sem yan thoi na ba tendi chila ya ane ngarger la ore jakpa zate rang chula chapa yi de onde rang chu so ngan ro ye na ngi chu nge ane che rang wa ta chu de na ngi che chu ro ko re ngi che chu ane zing zi ba ta che rang wa ta na me wa ta ane tendi la mu ne ko sem yon sak tik pa ze onde tem de pa khang bi number do tendi chila ko re Tatini tes yore, Cheta Narger deate, Sim Kambi Nabachan, Ko Kambachibo Narger on the Kolenga Yagare, Nga Tra, Samsam Roya, Sim Tui number Rochila, Nargela ore. Yan Soso Chiga Zing Zibatan, and then Nemeata, Terala Sobala, Samlotane, Te Mubachene, and Sosoya Tarzo, Sim Kandro Atelaya, and Jakbala ore. Yes, chapa.
And so when we are thinking about haughtiness, it might bring us to think about arrogance again, this mental factor of arrogance, because there are some similarities between arrogance and haughtiness. However, they are very much described as being different mental factors. And so just to remind oneself, so arrogance is, this idea of being full of oneself. And this is what Vasubandhu explains very well in his treatises. So there's also this being kind of full of oneself and also considering oneself as being better than others, being above others, So there is this comparison which is being done between others and thinking that oneself is better than others in that sense. As for haughtiness, there is this, in a sense, an attachment to the I, to the self, and there is also a kind of an inflation, you could say, or you become full of yourself because you're contemplating, my life and my qualities, whether it's physical qualities or whatever. But you observe these things, and the mind becomes really, in this sense, full of oneself. So it brings about this sense of pride, this sense of arrogance, this kind of inflated attitude by observing these different aspects of, like, I never get sick, or I, my life, and my, how beautiful I am, and so forth. So these are these sort of slight differences which exist between arrogance and haughtiness.
Tene gyagba chele de karrezena. Tanda Ninola Hassam Karin doze di do longidane, Janda Parme Kunji Stawa Tejir Sombatar, Ane Parme ba Numo bata Ni Numo batamchi Tenchegres. Also Parme ba Zeondi, Ane Chim Zemzo meba, Ane Teni Numo ba Karina ya, Che Chocho da Karina, Chen, Tendigur Tenche Niga, Tenche Niji Chate Oreze, Jabazade.
Là, so, Kyarba te Koran digi, Pagme tiki Chawa tiki Ten Chigurba, tira.
Ameba Numo, Mama Garda Numo Bata, New Numo Ba, Tama Tenche or Rezeco. Jabba Leondi, Numo Janda de Zoya, Gardero, Che Chochondo Zoyo Gores, Yobo Che Labo Gores.
Là, so. And so as for the function of haughtiness, explained in the Sutra of the Supreme intent, you could say, or maybe the supreme idea. The instigation, or the development of the supreme thought in this sutra, and so it says there. Haughtiness is the basis for non-conscientiousness, which means, a lack of being careful. So it makes your mind very much, it creates a state of mind where you're no longer careful in a sense, or you're no longer aware particularly of what you're doing. And so it also enables other disturbing emotions to arise very easily in your mind. So haughtiness really prepares the ground for these different disturbing emotions to, arise very comfortably and quickly in the mind.
Chibote Namse Semjo Namse de Kariorezena, Control Charto Shings, that de control Chartores. Ane Jala Ning Seva so Mepper, Ane Tun Samber, do be Semjon Chilaya, Ane Namsela Ores. Takarezor Kungote, Semjoting Water Karizena, Control Chartosha, Jala Ning Seva so Mepa, Ning Sewata, Ning Jewata, Ane Sevala Soba Mepper. Tendiga Ton Sambar Dopi, Ane Semjon. Ton Sambazena, Ane Kola Noba Chendo Semjon. Kola Ane Pena Susula Mayena, Tonchon Chendo Namba, Ton Sambazeonti, Kola Marab Chendo Namba, Tendiga Semjon Chilaya, Ane Namsela Gores.
And so the next mental factor is harmfulness. And so harmfulness it refers to a mental factor which is part of anger. Yeah, it's part of the category of anger. And it is a mental factor which is completely lacking or devoid of love and compassion and a kind of caring and sort of affectionate mind. And it is this mental factor which has this to harm others. Yeah, so is it whether it's looking down upon somebody, whether it's disregarding somebody, whether it's engaging in a in negative conduct, this is it's kind of the quality or the nature in a sense of harmfulness.
Tendi imba de ane pawa tome ku kunti na la kare son jaze na te so logo sare number sewa kan jena control yi char to ba ning sewa me ba ta ning jiwa me ba ta sewa me ba number 2 tsembe le chen no ji son ze ta din na la ya korang ngo zer le ya je namda manda wa ji son yo re ze je de kar ze na ning sewa me ba so nam tang ga son ba na gang gan thon sambar do be na ane ning sewa me ba gang ki thon sambar do ba ze on di kola ni ju je ba thon chong che ba ane tendi jendo ke on di kola ning sewa me ba cha re ze so so go ane janda la ya thon sambar je den ju bar do ba so so de je ma za mi janda la yun ne kola tendi thon sambar ni ju je ta thon cho chen Jubur dobena, and Ninja me bad, Ninja me bazetter. Janji cheban tongue tuna, Gisera, Tendia Jandaga, and a colan tonchon chair and rotan, Marab cherry batan, cola nova cherry was Toina, so gawagumne, Gisera, so tendix onion bado, Tendi chair, and a cola and a carde. Stea me bazea, te chakres. Tanda ko kunti di ngo song sa zurla ya zermanda jindwa ning tsewa me pa ning je me pa ane karze tsewa me pa number 2 sambe o te jede tereze
Se santigi number shite ninga me pa ni jiwa me pa tsewa me pa
tsewa me pa ning je me pa tsewa me pa ane number 2 number 2 sambe le chance
Laço.
Eu acho que não tem nada. Isso deve ser por causa.
And this one.
GG, this. Okay, so in the Abhidhamma, Sangha describes harmfulness, yeah, and he kind of breaks it down in 4 different sort of aspects, yeah, 4 different points, so describing what it is, yeah, and so so the first one is this kind of lacking of this affection. Well, it's quite difficult to translate in Tibetan because these words are very similar in English, yeah. So it's this lacking this kind of, you could say, this compassionate affection, and then there's one of them which is the second point would be not having compassion, and then the next one is having no affection, and then it's having this there's this aspect of wanting to harm or wanting to hurt, and these are the 4 sort of main points which come into which is Asanga's way to describe a harmfulness, yeah. And so it can also be in relation to if one is disregarding or looking down upon somebody, you could yourself have that attitude, but it could also push you to ask for somebody else to harm that person. And when you saw the other person actually harm this person you dislike, then you have this kind of feeling of being happy, of being satisfied in that sense, yeah. So yeah, did this. Gen langa so inji nang Lola ning me batang ninji me batang tsewa me batang tetso sum nga so inji tsik tigi sheta chikpada gu chik chade gyore chezanga ti gyorya lates kiran tigi yang deshi chik gyaptumna yaho yore samdo kaisna inji nang Lola nga so chikpada gu chik chade gitu
re tanda de ni tsewa me pa de on di docho she ora ta docho she na 맞죠? 닝제 아니 제와 아니 가르제 들에 닝 제와 제야다 아니 제와 제야다 닝제 제야다 다 조들에 제와다 닝제 제야다라 데스 캡처 닝제 데스 캡처한도 제와 데스 캡처한도 가서 닝제 데 셈체 아니 창마라야 인다 군이 주반로래 데스 닝제다 제와제야데 인나 소소페나 가르제 부당 소소고 총마당 제메로 든딜라야 아니 제와제 그러봐 델라야 드니 잔다당 소소당 레메제나 무드 소소테 다 분자로당 아니 드니 마인케테 솔라야 닝제제 드니 차버로 다테 온디 단다 디 나라 가르송고레제나 아니 랑기 아니 토탐바 랑가 잔달라 니주제 소소고 니주제야텔라 닝제와메 바제 소소 머잔다 나타와 그메나 머잔다들라 콜라 니주제 주안도 콜라 아니 두보 타야도 머잔다 윤네 타자라야 아니 카르데 제와메 바제 드니 그 제와메 바잔다 그 제데야다 잔다 그 콜은 통총 제데야다 드디 아니 소소는 통화예나 아니 지세랑 제바달라야 아니 카르데 제와메 바라오레 대 담보도 니 제와메 바 드니 니 제와메 바 아니 제와메 바제 섬데 드니 나버 토참벨레체자트 코로 참말야 야야레 시본도 차송고 단다 양양에 아니 니 제와메 바자테 소소고 아니 마잔달란 통총치아다 마잔달라 아니 두보타달라 니 제와메 바라 아니 마잔달라 아니 소소고 든디 제주야텔라 아니 니 제와메 바라레 예 파쇼 든디 제데야 소소는 통화이나 텔라 안 릭송 든디 콜라 통총체와 든디 콜라 고이엔데 든디 제고레 다제네 코도 소소 지세랑 제데야텔라 아니 제와메 바제 돈다도 든디도 삼레 이나 니 제와메 바다 니 제와메 바데 테스 직반더레 당아도 니 제다 제와제다 직반도 치레 도쇼
Läser. Okay, so I just asked Gena to explain a little bit more about these different qualities which are being described here by Asanga, because they seem very similar, yeah, especially in English the words are very similar. I'm kind of stuck using compassion and affectionate love or affection, yeah. So in general we can think of compassion as having a much more kind of greater scope, yeah. It's a much more kind of a wider, you could say, a state of mind, and affectionate love is kind of a little bit smaller in a sense, yeah. You could think of it like this. And we can think about, for example, in our relations, for example, how in relation to, for example, children, or there's these family relations, and there's this affectionate love that we have, you know, between each other in these relations. So this would be what would be described as affectionate love. And maybe we could think of compassion as something which is, in a sense, more applicable to strangers, people which are a little bit further away from us. So that's maybe one thing to think about, you know, in relation to who do we have an affectionate love, in relation to who do we have compassion. And so just to break it down again, so these sort of four qualities or 4 points which are described in relation to this, in relation to this mental factor called harmfulness. And so the first one is in relation to this compassion, and there's this lack of compassion and affection. And so this would manifest by somebody disregarding or harming somebody else, yeah. And then the second one, which is not having or lacking compassion, is pushing others into engaging into an action to harm somebody, because we disregard, so we push somebody else to do the dirty work, basically. And number 3, which is the lack of affectionate love, is once we see this action which has been completed, the person that we we wanted to harm is then harmed, we rejoice, we're satisfied, we have some kind of like inner satisfaction in seeing that harmfulness play out and, you know, achieving in a sense its goal.
Chitang Ningje dang Sewa Nila, Pena Ngamayana Ninji da Sewa ni Chikpa Resenye Yore. Yinaya Ningje dang Sewa the Karchabar Yorezena, Sewa la, Ane Docha dang, Tendig Wangi, Sewa Cheore, Che Chogore. Ane Ningje la, Dochaka Juchene, Ane Ninji Chayo Mare. Pena ane susu chongman ro dang, susu putuk te dore Sewa Cheonde, Tela Chakpa Ndeni Sewa Cheore. Yang mah kyobo ro tang pe semche nyam thabo dendi la mene nije kyate ane ko chabe ong ke o ma ko phasho ko dingar tang yang na nyam thabo shu chung thone tele nije kyo ta de dosho te nije me pa na te ta ro yo ne ha ko mu te ten ro re ta
Lesser. And so there are some people which have said before that compassion and affectionate love are similar in a sense, yeah, or they are the same. They can sometimes you find that people will say that these two compassion and affectionate love are the same. But actually, another way to think about them as their difference is that affectionate love is generally mixed up with attachment. And so this is why we can think about family relationships and the kind of the love which exists within that kind of family sphere, because it is mixed up with attachment in a sense. And then on the other hand, compassion, we will generate compassion, for example, when we see somebody in a poor or in a difficult situation, and it might be somebody which we don't know. So, and there's this kind of observing the suffering that they're enduring, and there's this generation of compassion. So here, there's not really any attachment involved because we're not particularly associated with that person, but we definitely see, and we have this this impulse of feeling in compassion by contemplating and sort of acknowledging the suffering that that person is enduring.
Tani tanda nunce zayate, karza, namce zayate, tan namji nga tso nunce zayate yorwa, o noba chewa tan tsewa chewa ze, chikpanda chire. Tanda de kapsa namce zayoran, tsewa zayondi, jala noba chewa, jan mashke pa zowa, jala tongchong chewa ta, jala nichu chena, jan mashke pa zowa tela, namce la wor. Nunce zayada, jala noba tangwa, ngu tang, jinne, yana ngusu no batang yana jinne no batang teni tsewa de ma zo kyoban tsewa me batang tawa tenjong ze ni she yo kumden ga namji so ina kyoban tsewa me ba zong de kyoba kandi je na li tang nga tang sem kar kyoba ina ya ko jala no ba mro jala no ba me chewa tendi chila ya tsewa me pa ze tsewa ze on de tendi no ba cheya de la tsewa ze bo 삼차 논체제야다 삼차 남체제야다 그래서 논체제야다 노바단 태완이 냠들랍데야 가르제 측문라 때때를 캬버요레스
So if we think about we have here a harmfulness, or another way to think about it is to think about violence, yeah, and it's kind of, it can manifest, harmfulness or violence can manifest in different ways. It can be a sort of direct harm which can be brought about, or indirectly harm can be brought about to the person. And these ideas might remind you of what His Holiness often mentions when he talks about these, non-violent conduct and the view of dependent arising. And so when we're thinking about non-violent conduct, yeah, it is referring to one's body, speech, and mind not being, acting in a violent way or in a harmful way, yeah. So this is referring to non-violent conduct which is presented within this sort of framework, yeah.
근데 단다디 차르토제 도아 코랑고 차르토제 컨트롤 차르토제 디간란도 차타 뜨무게 차르토제 차르토제데 코 데센더 토파레 데테 티 콘스 도바르 두아레 티 콘스 토파 데르 토파 차르토제 데도 타마 코치 치파레세 다데 차르토제데
And so also harmfulness, it is a part of anger. And you've heard me say this a lot, part of. And this part of means that this mental factor it falls within, it fits within the greater category of anger. So this is what is meant when I'm talking about part of. It means that it is a chunk in a sense of anger, but the wider chunk is anger.
Lasso tene tanda ni shu chuba de parten ro soa namse. Tene chuba yona, chuba taro na.
So we've gotten to this point of harmfulness. So does anybody have any questions?
I have a question,
Question.
I have a question. It's not really a question, but the fourth one, spite. I didn't quite understand very well the fourth one. If you could explain again briefly.
Genla kurantigi ta shibate sepor chuma song tsik la yate tsik chaptan tsik
Shibadan.
shiba kurantigi ninyo nishu tigi shibat seporan chuma song tsik te la yate
Ninyo nishu de kare sibo choma soze.
shiba te la shiba
Shibate ndera.
The
tsik
Tsikpa. Tsikpa zayate ra. Ani soso shandaga nipa chiyo ra. Pena pesha. Ngandro chika kuma chi kuyo wache. Koranga tropo ra ngala kuma kuyo baha kuyo. Chorang kuma jabjiyo maritaze. Chorang kuma jamna. Ani tumkhalan ro gore. Nipa ndiri yungore de ngala. Ani laba yenas ra. Nge kola pa ane nibate pa bea kuma jata kogo ha mako ag cheta. One chena garcha gore dena nge kuma dili jawi ya gonda ze tramo tancha ko lago reze. Tramo tancha lawa yena ane ko nibate sando reze. Ane tindi malawa chene kola pasho lamye soso tropo chora tela ane control tang kunzeng ngen roa che. Tene jendiwi samba ze soso da pa ta ren roi samba tindigo ane kola tsuksam damanda maya che ti maya go man dopi ndoba chi ora semjong chi o dela ya jiba tsikba ze nga so laina tsikba za ze cho tsikba za ko tsikba za tsandu ze ando chi ora ti indi ko kanane tsik dikjan damanda lawya tang ko kanane ane tsik supo lawya te so ngele ya ane tsikba za semjong ndo tsares.
So to give an example of spite, we can think of, let's say I've stole something, and so somebody has seen me do this, and they say, you shouldn't steal, you're going to get into trouble. When this person, maybe a friend of mine, is telling me this, I am trying to wriggle my way out of it and trying to hide the fact that I've stolen something. And so normally, the right thing to do would be to admit and say, yes, I did do that and I apologize, and this is the way to purify that negative action. But spite means that we don't do that, and so this person who is calling us out for this negative action that we've done, we actually start to feel much more distant from them. We start pushing them away, and in our mind we become filled with anger and resentment, and so this urge to insult that person. And so generally when we talk about spite in everyday language, we say, don't use harsh words, but harsh words are coming about through spite. They're coming about through this mental factor, which is pushing us to act and to use harsh words.
Da yanje test ra ko de ane janda ga soso le nipa la ina soso nipa te ngole nipa ngole che chora nipa ngole che mato ne kola pa le lo ne kola tsik dik cha la jora tendi do je la war do do ta ten san la yana so so la kyön jo ba che kyön de ngole che mato che kyön ngole che mato ne kola pa le lo ne tsik da ma da dik cha lab la wa jora ti lam do ke tambo kerlon semjong jora te la ya tsik pa la war es
So just to go a little bit further with this, to illustrate it in a really kind of straightforward manner, it would be, we can say like it's an incapacity to accept and to acknowledge the negative thing that you've done. And so not only you're not able to accept it, but you kind of retaliate when somebody says, oh, you know, you did this or you did that. And not only you don't accept it or acknowledge it, you start insulting the person. Yeah. So you don't acknowledge the fault, and in reaction to the criticism or which is being put towards you, you just start basically shouting and insulting the person. Yeah. So this is the mental factor. The insulting, when you insult in retaliation, the mental factor which makes you do that is spite.
That's all. Chanda?
Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question about haughtiness, and I was kind of when he's saying that it's the basis of non-conscientiousness, I'm wondering, and like conscientiousness being intentional is kind of like the what do you say, remedy to this, or if it's kind of has a different remedy that people can also use. Thanks.
Gela koran ki katishiyate yarpa tandaware. Ani tinang rola kirandi gi karisumba sena gyabate suso degi kai pagme chibi tenchi sogiyore chagiyorwa. Chisang nga so ti nyembo te kandes tengugore tik pagyo ti tengugore gyabati meba soyala yang kares chigore.
Re jakpat nyembo te la ya ane tenshi pagayo teatre nyomo che on di trembaz nyomo ndri che son nyemne tenche tenite nyomo kandi che du de shibjeng chara che ro tenshi ten de tenshi teche ane pagayo de on di katina zabzab che nyomo che so so ken ram da mombo tangora tanda de jagban ro chubo yena kor kar de na meata lanso tala papa tan so so le chu ta te mombo ji tang pozo soba re on di ane jagba de che on go ro che renbo de saresa ane nga che zi tan lanso te so ya po yoze ane ju panjo tan ane wang cha de so ta wang cha yuni na wang cha de so yoze di kapsa ya ne soya jagbatyon ti kapsa ane pagayo bazya de tengo re de pagayo de on di de so wan de masone de so ane le on di de zon ton on di so so ya ane jagbazya de ngato karar de ne gambi na la wu ja na je chembore gambi na la wu de chu ba so jana ko gambo chong chong cha do ro de na ja
Gambo na gambo di balloon de
nala puja do o de
oh di pugudi
o tali a pebo cha wa de de ngone jena ko nimbo yo mare de pa u de ma me ware so na ko dara che yo mare wa de na jere de so so ya ane ko ata so so ta zi da lan so de so so chu la mu ne ane sem yo so tik pa da pe pa cham ne ko kar de cham ro de yo ro re do ngone jena ko de cha yo mare pa so so karina jiwata troche gores payo bache gores nimbo de date insare tenshi da payo teata so
And so in relation to the antidotes to haughtiness, so indeed we could say that conscientiousness along with a sort of mindfulness would be a mindfulness action would be ways in order to apply the antidote to happiness, because what's happening is that because it is the basis for the generation of disturbing emotions, one needs to be very much aware of what is happening in one mind. So this is why this dimension or this side of the mind which is able to spy or to look out and on what is arising in the mind is important, because once you're aware, mindful of what's arising, then you will be able to be careful. Yeah, you'll be able to have this notion of being conscientious in relation to them. So haughtiness is having this attitude of, looking at the good things that you have in life, whether it's, your health, whether it's, being good looking, whether it's, being wealthy, or if you have power, being powerful. Yeah. And instead of being inflated, yeah, it's very important at this point to apply conscientiousness, to be aware of what's happening in your mind, because without this conscientiousness, one will fall into haughtiness. And haughtiness really looks like a balloon, yeah? So just like we have a balloon and we inflate it, on the outside it looks something, but actually there's nothing inside, in a sense. It's just air, and it will very easily pop. And this is this kind of inflated feeling, is this kind of attitude or that haughtiness actually has. So indeed, the way to sort of apply the antidote or to respond to haughtiness is by reflecting upon and developing conscientiousness, which basically means to be careful, yeah, in relation to disturbing emotions, and mindfulness and introspection.
Lazo
Thank you.
yanda yo namena.
Anybody else have a question?
Pache me tare. Lazo tamala tuji che.
Thank you, Genla. Tuchina.
Gejer Lola la tuji che.
Tuchina, Genla.
Tane anji manji yon.
And see you soon, everybody.
That's- Mm.